120 million years ago, in what is now northwestern China, something was hunting the earliest birds from the treetops. It wasn't a large predator. It was a dinosaur, roughly the size of a barn owl, with feathers on its arms, feathers on its legs, and the ability to glide between trees like a tiny flying dragon. It hunted from above. It was silent. And until June 2026, nobody knew it existed. Before we get to the new discovery, we need to address the raptor in the room. The velociraptors in Jurassic Park are one of cinema's most iconic monsters. Large, scaly, terrifyingly smart, human-sized, and almost completely wrong. The real velociraptor was roughly the size of a turkey. It had feathers. We know this from fossil evidence of quill knobs on its arm bones. It weighed about 15 to 30 pounds. The Jurassic Park version was essentially a completely different animal wearing the same name badge. But here's the thing. If the real velociraptor surprises you, wait until you hear about its cousins, because some of Velociraptor's closest relatives were even stranger. They were the Microraptors, and they had 4 wings. Microraptors were a subfamily of the raptor family Dromaeosaurids, the same family that includes Velociraptor. But Microraptors took a very different evolutionary path. Where Velociraptor was a ground predator, Microraptors were built for the trees. Their legs had long feathers just like their arms, creating 4 wing surfaces total. Researchers believe they used these to glide, like a flying squirrel. They could launch from a high branch, spread all 4 limbs, and cover significant distances before landing on another tree, or on a target. The fossil was discovered in the Changma Basin, a site in Gansu Province in northwestern China. Since 2002, paleontologists led by Matthew Lamanna of the Carnegie Museum of Natural History in Pittsburgh have recovered more than 100 partial bird skeletons from this single site. Birds with preserved feathers, birds with preserved skin. The site is dominated by an ancient species called Gansus yumanensis, one of the first Mesozoic birds ever found in China. But there was a mystery at Changma. Among all those beautiful bird fossils, researchers kept finding clusters of broken bird bones. Bones compressed into pellet-like masses, exactly like the regurgitated pellets that modern owls produce after eating. Something at this site was eating birds and leaving the evidence behind. For 120 million years, nobody knew what. In the Changma Basin, amid thousands of bird fossils, researchers found something different. A partial left shoulder and forelimb, a fused shoulder blade, an upper arm bone, and the radius and ulna. 4 bones. That's the entire specimen, but those 4 bones were enough to identify a brand new species. Published June 4th, 2026 in the Annals of Carnegie Museum, the new species is named Jianchangmensis. Jian meaning arrow in Chinese. Changmensis for the Changma Basin, where it was found. And crucially, it is the first non-bird dinosaur ever found at Changma. Among more than 100 bird fossils recovered over 20 years of excavation, only this single predator specimen has ever been found. Now let's talk about the 4 wings, because this is genuinely one of the strangest things in the history of animal life. Modern birds have 2 wings, highlighting their arms. Microraptors had feathers on their legs, too, creating a second pair of wing surfaces. 4 total. Jingmai O'Connor, associate curator of fossil reptiles at the Field Museum in Chicago and co-author of the study, estimated from the single upper arm bone that Jian was one of the biggest Microraptor specimens ever found. The upper arm bone is about 4 inches long, meaning the whole animal probably had a wingspan of around 4 feet, about the size of a barn owl. A 4-foot wingspan, 4 wings, tree climbing capability. This was a precision aerial predator that could control its flight path using 4 independent wing surfaces, moving silently through the canopy like a 4-winged ghost. Remember those mysterious pellet-like bone clusters? Jianchangmensis is almost certainly the answer. It is the only non-bird body fossil found at Changma. It was clearly a carnivore, It was significantly larger than the Gansus birds preserved at the same site. The researchers are careful to say they cannot prove Jian made those pellets directly, but the circumstantial case is overwhelming, and previous specimens of related microraptors have been found with fish, lizards, mammals, and birds preserved in their stomach contents, suggesting microraptors were opportunistic hunters of essentially everything they could catch. So how did Jian hunt? Two theories. Theory 1, ambush predator. Jian waits motionless in the canopy and drops onto birds that land below it. The four wings give it controlled, silent descent, no loud wing beats to warn the prey. Theory 2, active canopy patrol. Moving through the forest, using its four wings to glide efficiently, covering a hunting territory above the lake. The researchers specifically mentioned it may have moved through the canopy like a sugar glider. Either way, if you were a Gansus bird at the Changma Lake 120 million years ago, looking up was advisable. Here's what always amazes people unfamiliar with paleontology. 4 bones. That's everything that exists of Jiancheng mensis. And from those 4 bones, scientists determined a completely new species. Its position in the dinosaur family tree, its approximate wingspan, its likely weight class, its probable hunting behavior, and its ecological role at the Changma site. Lamanna summed it up honestly. We don't have very much of Jian, just some bones from the shoulder and forelimb. It's enough to know that there was this interesting new microraptor living 120 million years ago in northwestern China, but not enough to learn everything we'd like to know. Then he added something wonderful. Maybe one of your readers will eventually become a paleontologist and be the one who finds the rest of Jian. The fossil record is not closed. The best discoveries are not behind us. Jiancheng mensis sits right on the boundary between dinosaur and bird. Not a bird, but not a typical ground-running raptor either. It's in between. Steve Brusata, who literally just published a whole book about this transition, called it neat. A new fossil of those dinosaurs that were basically on the cusp of becoming true birds. From a man who has dedicated his career to these animals, that's high praise. The Changma Basin has barely been scratched. After 20 years, over 100 bird fossils, and now the first non-bird predator, more discoveries are coming. More species are waiting in the rock, more chapters of the story of how dinosaurs became the birds on your windowsill. That's this episode of Tune of Time. Drop a comment. Do you think the 4-wing design was better than 2 wings? Subscribe for latest discoveries. See you next time.